Hi everyone. Notes 5.2 are on angles and parallel lines cut by transversals. And before we can talk about angles and parallel lines cut by transversals, we have to talk about what parallel lines are and what transversals are. So parallel lines are lines that never intersect on a plane. So like for example, R and S right here are parallel lines right here, and they're parallel because they never intersect. So here our notation is R is parallel to S. So this symbol right here means parallel. Okay, and then this line T right here is a line that cuts through the parallel lines. It's called a transversal. And when I draw in this line right here, it creates all these different angles with my parallel lines here. So the first thing we need to do is discuss some definitions. And I'm just going to warn you in advance, this video is very definition heavy. So just bear with me as we go through these definitions. So the first thing I want to talk about are what alternate exterior angles are. But first we have to identify what exterior angles are. So I want you to imagine if you were to have a sandwich, the exterior of your sandwich is the bread, and the interior of your sandwich is whatever's in your sandwich. So let's say it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, for example. So here, this right here, the 4, 3, 5, and 6, these angles are on the inside of your sandwich. This is the peanut butter and jelly. So these are the interior angles. And then if you look right here, these angles out here are your bread of your sandwich. So these are the outside of your sandwich. This is the exterior. These are exterior angles, okay? So let's fill in the definition of an alternate exterior angle. So alternate exterior angles are angles that are on the outside of the parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So for example, here, angle 1, for example, is on the outside of my parallel lines, okay? And the other angle that is the alternate exterior angle to it is angle 7. Now, one of them has to be on the top slice of bread, the other one has to be from the bottom slice of bread. Now, notice how they are on opposite sides of that transversal, which is why they are called alternate exterior angles. So we would say angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. Now, this symbol right here means congruent, and congruent means that they are the same size and the same shape. So they would be equal to each other. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 7. Now, if you notice here, this is going to create a Z. Angle 1 and angle 7 create the letter Z. So this is also known as the Z pattern. Another example would be angle 2 right here would have to be congruent to angle 8. Now, alternate interior angles are very similar. The only difference now is that these are angles on the inside of the parallel lines and on opposite sides of the transversal. So if you were to look at this right here, angle 4 right here and angle 6 are both on the inside of our parallel lines. They're on opposite sides of the transversal. One is attached to the top slice of bread, the other one is attached to the bottom slice of bread. So angle 4 would always be congruent to angle 6. So no matter what angle 4 is, angle 6 would be the exact same size, okay? And if you notice here, we would also have a Z pattern formed by these angles as well, okay? And then another set would be angle 3 and angle 5. Those are alternate interior angles. Now, quick note, the Z is allowed to be backwards, okay? Totally fine. If the Z is backwards, it's still alternate interior or alternate exterior angles. All right, so now corresponding angles. Angles that are in the same place if you were to make the parallel lines on top of each other. So see lines R and S. If I were to move line S right here and take all of these angles and place them on top of line R, what angles would be in the exact same spot? Well, if I were to move this whole thing up right here, then 5 would be where angle 1 is, 6 would be where angle 2 is, 7 would be where angle 3 is, and 8 would be where angle 4 is. And these would also be congruent to each other. So here we would say angle 1 is congruent to angle 5. If you notice, they're in the exact same spot respective to the lines that they are sitting on. Okay. Another example would be angle 2 would be congruent to angle 6. Another example would be angle 3 would be congruent to angle 7. And then a last example would be angle 4 is congruent to angle 8. Now, just a quick note, like let's say I were to look at angle 2 and angle 6, these angles right here make an F pattern. So this is also known as the F pattern. And just a note about the F pattern, just like the Z pattern, it is allowed to be backwards. So if you notice here, like angle 1 and angle 5, those are corresponding. We have a backwards F, and that's totally allowed as well. Next thing that we have here are vertical or opposite angles. They're diagonal or across from each other. So we don't need parallel lines for these ones, okay? So like angle 1 is going to be congruent to angle 3. Those are diagonal from each other. So just like we learned about opposite angles without parallel lines, you don't need them. They're both on the same line here. So angle 1 would have to be congruent to angle 3. Another example here would be angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. Now on line S, we also have angle 5 and angle 7, and we also have angle 6 and angle 8. So these are vertical or opposite angles here. Now the next definition are adjacent angles. And these are angles that are next to each other. So for example, right here, angle 1 and angle 2 are next to each other right here. They're right beside each other, and that's what adjacent means. And if you notice, they're not going to be congruent to each other unless they're both 90 degrees because they make a straight line, which means that they add up to 180 degrees. So they're supplementary to each other. So you would say angle 1, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. Now, if you notice here, the same thing is true for angle 1 and angle 4. They're still next to each other. It's just angle 4 is below it as opposed to the side of it, but they're still right next to each other. So we would say angle 1 and angle 4 also add up to 180 because they make a straight line. And there are a lot of other examples here, but I'm just going to give you just a couple examples. Quick note, this M right here means measure. So the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180. All right, almost there, people. Last definition is co-interior angles. And these are angles on the inside of the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. So if I were to look at the lines that I have up here, interior angles, just a reminder, would only be 3, 4, 5, and 6 because they are on the inside right here. They have to be on the same side of the transversal. So for example, right here, angle 3 and angle 6 are on the same side of the transversal. Now, they will never be congruent to each other. Angle 3 can never be equal to angle 6 unless they're both 90-degree angles, okay? But they do add up to 180. So here we would say angle 3, the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 6 is 180. And if you notice, angles 3 and 6 make the letter C. So this is called the C pattern. So we can say the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 6 is equal to 180 degrees. We have another pair. If we look at angle 4 and angle 5, they're both interior angles on the same side of this transversal right here. So those are also going to be supplementary. So when are angles going to be congruent to each other and when are they going to be supplementary? They will be congruent to each other if they are one of these angles here. So if they are alternate exterior, alternate interior, corresponding, or vertical or opposite, then they will always be congruent to each other. Otherwise, they will be supplementary angles. So pretty much if they're not these four right here, then they would be supplementary. But also they would be supplementary if they are adjacent or if they are co-interior. All right, so let's use this information to answer some of these questions. So looking at the parallel lines cut by a transversal to the right, answer the following questions. So the first question is asking us, what is the corresponding angle to angle 4? So if you look here, we have angle 4 right here is on line M. Which angle is on line L that's in the exact same position as angle 4 up here? And that would have to be angle 8. So angle 8 corresponds to angle 4. And if you see, we have our F pattern right here. All right, now let's find the alternate interior angle to angle 5. So angle 5 is an inside angle, so it's either going to be 3, 4, 5, or 6. It's obviously not 5, and it has to be on the other line. So if angle 5 is on line L, then the other one has to be on line M, and it has to be on the opposite side of this transversal. So that means that angle 3 has to be the alternate interior angle to angle 5. Okay. Let's find the vertical or the opposite angle to angle 8. So this one does not require the other line. So angle 8 is on line L. So the angle that is across from it or opposite it is angle 6. Let's find the alternate exterior angle to angle 1. So angle 1 is on line M. The exterior angles on line L are 7 and 8, but we have to look for the one that's on the opposite side of the transversal, which means that this has to be angle 7. What is the corresponding angle to angle 6? So angle 6 right here is on line L. What angle is on line M that's in the same exact position? That would be angle 2, okay? And then we are asked which angles are adjacent to angle 5. So there's two answers for this one right here. So angle 5 is right here, and adjacent means it's next to it. They make a straight angle, a straight 180 degrees. So angle 6 has to be one of them. And then the other angle would have to be angle 8 because that also makes a straight line with angle 5. All right. And then lastly, if it says if angle 3 is 85 degrees, so I will put 85 right here for angle 3. Determine the remaining angles. So let's find the angles that are congruent to angle 3 first of all. So if this is angle 3 and it's 85, then angle 1 also has to be 85 degrees because it is vertical to angle 3. Angle 3 is also an interior angle, so the alternate interior angle to angle 3 is also angle 5. So angle 5 is also 85 degrees. And then angle 3 has its corresponding angle at angle 7, so angle 7 has to be 85 degrees as well. Perfect. So now let's talk about angle 2 here. So angle 2 and angle 3 make 180 degrees. So the only way that I can figure out what angle 2 is by subtracting 85 from 180 degrees. And the order matters when you do your subtraction. So you have to put that 180 first. So this answer right here is 95 degrees. So we know angle 2 is 95. Well, if angle 2 is 95, then angle 4 also has to be 95 because those are vertical angles. And if angle 2 is 95, then angle 6 also has to be 95 because angle 2 and angle 6 are corresponding angles. And if angle 2 is 95, then angle 8 has to be 95 because these are alternate exterior angles. And then we're done with this set of questions. Now we have the same drawing here, and I just want to talk really quickly about a few more questions related to this drawing here. So here we're told that angles 3 and 7 are congruent to each other. Why are they congruent? Because the vocabulary word that connects those two are corresponding angles. Next, we have angles 4 and 6. They are congruent. So question number 9 says angles 4 and 6 are congruent to each other. Why are they congruent to each other? Because these ones are on opposite sides of the transversal and they're inside our parallel lines. So these are alternate interior angles. Next one, angles 4 and 5 are supplementary. Why? So here's angle 4, here's angle 5. Why are these supplementary? They're both interior angles and they're on the same side of the transversal. So this time they are co-interior angles. So that means that they have to add up to 180 degrees. Next one, angles 8 and 2 are congruent. Why are they congruent? So if you notice, they're both exterior angles and they are on opposite sides of the transversal, which means these have to be alternate exterior angles. And then lastly, angles 1 and 3 are congruent. Why are they congruent to each other? Because they are across from each other or diagonal from each other, which means that they are opposite or vertical angles. And that's it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class. Bye.